Many people are attracted to Buddhism and the Buddhist teachings because they talk about freedom or liberation. Of course, in life, the first thing we have to achieve is just physical freedom or liberation. Like maybe one of the worst things that could happen to you would be to be a slave to somebody else. So traditionally, nowadays, slavery is looked on as something bad or wrong. Of course, the Buddha was pointing more to the inner slavery of the mind, the lack of freedom that comes when we're under the influence of mental defilements, greed, anger, delusion, or unwholesome mental states, akusala Dhamma. But you have to start from the outside and work inwards in the practice. So once you have your external freedoms, such as a meditation retreat like this, you have a lot of freedom. You don't have to cook or do any particular work, travel. You can dedicate all your time and energy to the practice. You could say you have your external freedom. Now you have to look inwardly and look at where you may still be bound up or enslaved to the defilements. One of the ways the Buddha talked about mental defilements is as sangyojana, fetters that bind us to the world. Just like ropes or chains or something that bind us to the world, but they're binding the mind to the round of rebirth, to the experience of stress and suffering. There's 10 fetters, and the first 3 are what we probably talk about the most, because they're the most relevant for unenlightened individuals practicing the Dhamma. Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view; Vicikicca, skeptical doubt; Silabbata Paramasa, a blind attachment to rituals and practices. These are the first 3 fetters that bind the mind to the world, to rebirth and to suffering. So as we're practicing, we're developing the knowledge, insight that will free us from these fetters, so give us true liberation on the inside as well as the outside. In fact, even if you were enslaved on the outside for some reason, if you develop the insight on the inside to liberate your mind, you'd still experience that liberation. Some people look at illness or injury as like being enslaved because you're stuck with your illness. You can't free yourself or get away from your illness. But if you manage to abandon the first 3 fetters, then your illness would be much less of a problem to you mentally, even though physically it's there. So as we practice on retreat, you see that the importance of learning to restrain your speech, your actions, what we might call sila, and composure, practice composure, restraint in our speech, our actions, because this is the first place that these inner fetters and the mental defilements, unwholesome states of mind come out. It's in our speech, our actions. So say we undertake the 8 precepts, and the idea is to have guidelines that help you to practice and keep your body, your actions, your speech, what you say within boundaries, within limits. And when you put effort into keeping the precepts, it brings you composure of body, composure of mind. This is a vital part of the practice because it gives us a sense of stability in our life and in our minds, in our hearts, which is a foundation for happiness. And you'll see if you're keeping the precepts or using those guidelines, even if on the inside you still have greed or anger, wrong views, worries coming up, if you're following the precepts, keeping the precepts, this will prevent those unwholesome mental states leading out or spilling out into your action, your speech. And we don't practice the precepts alone, they're practiced in conjunction with other qualities. When the Buddha taught the monks to practice with restraint, composure, he talked about 5 main factors for composure, sangwara, this quality, sangwara, to arise. Sila is just the first, keeping your precepts. If you're a monk, it means keeping the patimokkha, discipline. If you're a layperson, the 8 precepts say. There's also other factors that will help. And this is the way the Buddha talked about the practice to help us see that if suffering arises from causes, but we can end our suffering or liberate or free ourselves from suffering also through developing the right causes. When we're still caught into these fetters, this way of thinking, say sakkaya ditthi, we're always seeing things from the point of view of being a person, me, myself, them, me and you, us and them. So if you're suffering, you always look at it as my suffering. I'm suffering, and we tend to see it more just as kind of a state of affairs. This has to be our destiny, or my bad luck has to be like this, my suffering. But the Buddha was encouraging us to develop wisdom and understanding, and see that things arise through causes. And if those causes change or those causes are removed, then maybe the suffering can disappear too. So just as suffering has its causes, the mental defilements that the mind gets caught up in, greed, anger and delusion, the end of suffering has its causes, the cultivation of the path. And that begins with this practice of restraint, composure, or we say sangwara. This is a cause for the mind to become more peaceful, and even our body, our actions, our speech, to become more peaceful. So keeping the precepts is a cause for liberating your mind from suffering. Often we see precepts as like a burden, and the rules, nobody likes other people telling them what to do. Maybe other people, when you come to a retreat, you think, other people are telling me what to do, keep the rules, do this, do that. Really, the purpose of precepts is that you understand the benefit for yourself. You take them on for yourself through your own choice, voluntarily, seeing them as a cause for liberation from suffering. Even keeping precepts, we often will have a sense of self come up. Instead of using them as like tools for developing this sense of peace, restraint, we use them and develop a sense of self or conceit, self-view, sakkaya ditthi again. So I am one who keeps the precepts. So of course if you develop some conceit around precepts, it's not liberating anymore. Now it's become constraining or restricting my precepts. And if you meet someone who doesn't keep precepts as well as you, or doesn't keep precepts at all, if you have a sense of self or conceit, you might look down on them. Or if you break a precept unmindfully, maybe you feel very guilty and feel like it's the end of the world. So even keeping precepts, we have to reflect with use some wise reflection. Reflect, well, these are useful ways of practice to help bring some composure, peace, calm to my behavior, and to the mind, to help me abandon some of the worst kinds of behavior, like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and so on. But it's not to generate a new attachment for the mind, a new sense of self that then can become a cause for more suffering. They're more like a vehicle to help us move towards liberation. Of course, to keep precepts you need mindfulness. People often think of mindfulness as a quality you develop just in meditation. So you go on a meditation retreat and learn about mindfulness and how to practice mindfulness. But already if you are undertaking precepts, you'll need mindfulness, and mindfulness will arise as you put effort into keeping your precepts. Sometimes mindfulness arises when you realize if you don't keep a precept, you don't feel happy or peaceful in yourself. You feel regret. Say if you kill a fly or mosquito and you reflect back on that, you probably feel unhappy with yourself. It may only be a small unhappiness because it's a small creature. But still you can't feel very good about yourself if you deliberately kill. So then as you determine not to kill and to keep that precept more carefully, mindfulness arises because you start paying attention in situations where you may be tempted to kill. When you take precepts on, you make an adhitthana, determination, say, I'm going to keep a precept. That requires, or is a cause for bringing up mindfulness as well. Because you now have something you follow, a guideline you follow. So you reflect back, maybe every day, at the end of your day you might reflect back, did I keep the precepts today? How did my day go? Did I break any precepts? If I did, how did it happen? What happened? This is the way mindfulness arises, reflecting or reviewing what happened during a period of time. One day is a good period of time to think about, what did I do today, or what did I do yesterday? As you reflect like this, you become much more aware of what you've said and done. And there'll still be blanks or patches where you may have not been very aware. But even that you can become aware afterwards and say, oh, there was that period I got really unmindful. I didn't know what I was saying, what I was doing. And you learn that way. Also, as you keep precepts and then try to be mindful of your precepts, you're more aware of how you interact with other people. Because the precepts are stopping us from hurting others as well as ourselves. So particularly speech, you might notice, if I start telling lies, I don't feel happy in myself, but also other people don't like it. Just as I don't like being lied to, other people don't like being lied to. So mindfulness arises, I don't want to say anything that's not true. Some situations maybe you learn to just stay quiet, or you speak in a way where you can say some things, don't say others, but without actually lying. And you have to keep reviewing the consequences, the results of what you've said and done. And then mindfulness arises around the precepts. It's not just a one-off. Once you take the precepts on the first day of a retreat and then never think about them again. They're something that you use over and over again. What lies behind your actions, your speech? Well, there's intentions coming up. So sometimes you may notice, you have the intention to break a precept. You may not be able to stop that intention arising, but you can be mindful of it and at least restrain or compose yourself so you don't speak or act in a way that breaks the precept, even though the intention has arisen. So you stop yourself. You might say you learn how to stop or halt some things. People who break the precepts all the time, people who haven't learned how to stop. So we say they have a car with no brakes, damaged brakes. They don't know how to slow down, don't know how to stop themselves. Not very composed, not very restrained. So sila and sati, sila and mindfulness, they work together to bring up restraint, composure. If you put effort into this, you'll find your level of mindfulness improves before you've even sat down to meditate, before you develop any techniques of samatha or vipassana. Already your behavior has become quite peaceful if you're putting effort into keeping precepts. It means you can feel relaxed with yourself because you're not hurting others through your speech, your actions. Even if you still have moods coming up, intentions to hurt, but you're not acting on them, you're not putting them into action, then you can feel relaxed and happy within yourself. Another factor the Buddha said that brings up this sense of peace, restraint, calm is wisdom, panya, or jnana. Jnana means knowledge, vision of the way things are. It's another word for panya. Jnana sangvara, restraint through knowledge. Usually in a monastery, the way you develop this first is through developing the ability to reflect on the basic things you use, food and clothing and accommodation and medicines, the basics of life, learning to reflect how to use them wisely, how to obtain them wisely, so you're not taking advantage of other people, you're not stealing or cheating them out of their things to get what you want. So you think about the way you gain the basics of life. If you're in a monastery on a retreat, it's easy because, again, you've signed up to the monastery's retreat. And the monastery gives you free food, free accommodation, simple accommodation, just a patch of ground where you can put your tent. Toilet, showers, facilities, medicine if you get sick. We've got a big stock of Panadol for everyone with headaches. So you don't have to worry about where you get these basic necessities from, but you still have to learn how to use them wisely. Like when you go down to get food, you practice wise reflection. You're wisely reflecting, I eat this food not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beauty, just to maintain, nourish the body so I can practice the Dhamma for a day and a night. And when you put your clothes on, like we wear white clothes, simple clothes, it's not a fashion show, it's not a place where you have to put a lot of effort into choosing different kinds of colours and shapes and styles. You just wear simple white clothes because it supports the practice. As you reflect with wisdom, understanding, well, you realize wearing white clothes doesn't yet guarantee that your mind is pure and peaceful, but it's a start because it means you're just simplifying your life. You don't have to spend a lot of time or thought on clothing. You just wear modest clothing. So these are the ways you're training in panya, wisdom. Wise reflection. Why do I eat? Why do I wear clothes? Rather than always thinking about what you like and what you don't like, which is the way we go in the world usually. We're following our preferences and desires. So I like this kind of clothing, I like this kind of food, I don't like that clothes, I don't like that food. I want my house to be this way, I don't want it to be that way. So much of the time in the world, we're just going according to our moods and our desires. And we suffer a lot. Greed, anger, delusion. When you come on retreat, you've got a chance just to practice some wise reflection and eat enough food just to be healthy. Use the accommodation and facilities just to support your practice of meditation. And you can set aside preferences. You don't choose the food in the sense you don't make the food or bring it here. So you just make the best of what's available. This is using wisdom, and it will bring you a sense of peace. There may be some things you like a lot, some things you like a little, some things you don't like at all. But you reflect, well, in the end the most important thing is just getting food or having clothing to keep you warm or keep the sun off. The style, the fashion doesn't matter so much. The taste of the food doesn't matter so much as long as it's reasonable and healthy. And this is wise reflection, and this brings you a sense of composure and restraint. You line up to get the food, you just take enough, and you might think about the people behind you in the line, so you just take enough. You don't need to go crazy. We don't have food fights. This is a form of composure, living in the world peacefully, because you think about things and realize, you can use wisdom in your choices and your decisions rather than just your mood. And when we're at home, maybe you're feeling in a bad mood, so we have comfort eating and eat to reduce our stress maybe, rather than eat just for health. It becomes a kind of psychological need maybe, or sometimes go the other way, start to hate food and stop eating food. If you're aiming for peace of body, peace of speech, peace of mind, then we start using wisdom to help understand better how to live in the world skillfully, and not just follow greed or anger, to follow wisdom, knowledge. And we also use wisdom, and we think about how we relate to other people, not just physical, material things, but how we relate to other people, what we say, what we do. So you might say, think about in the monastery, this is a communal place, public place, but still we use the facilities, so it's correct for everyone to help keep things clean, tidy. So we help out with the chores. We do what we can. Those with more energy can do more maybe. Those with less energy or weaker, older, maybe do a bit less. That takes some wisdom and thought. Same as when we're at home, we have to learn how to run our household with wisdom. How to relate to other people. Maybe somebody else is doing too much in the house, so we have to help them out. Maybe there's somebody who does very little, so we have to find ways to encourage them to do more. We have to learn how to relate to other people with wisdom rather than just following our moods. I like this person, don't like that person. So wisdom also leads on to metta and compassion. Looking for ways to harmonize and get on with other people well. Another factor the Buddha said that will bring peace, composure to your behavior and to your mind is khanti. Khanti means patience, endurance. Patient endurance is always a useful quality, but it's again applied with wisdom and understanding. So like say last night when there's wind and rain battering your tent, you need to be patient with the conditions because you can't stop the weather, you can't change the weather, no one can do that. So you have to be patient. Patience means being willing to be with some things that are maybe sometimes hard to bear, painful, difficult, but perhaps we have no choice. But you keep your mind in a good state. Patience is a wholesome, skillful quality. So when you bring up patience knowingly, your mind will not be going to anger, or worry, or fear. You'll be patient with whatever else is coming up in your experience. Another way the Buddha talked about patience, he said it makes people beautiful. Beauty now has become an industry. It's all about how you look, your physical features, your clothing, your face, your hair, all these things. But actually there's the beauty, a much deeper, more profound beauty, the beauty of the mind. And the mind that has patience, endurance, is beautiful because it doesn't give in to unskillful states easily, doesn't get angry easily, doesn't give in to worries. So you learn patience all the time when you practice meditation. I mean, your body maybe sometimes feels good, sometimes feels tired, sometimes pain, sometimes too hot, sometimes too cold. When you're patient with all that, it brings a certain beauty to your practice. It's beautiful to see someone being patient with difficult conditions. Could be one person being patient with another person who's difficult, say like a parent with a child who's very uncontrolled, unrestrained, but the parents are being very patient. Or someone who's ill being patient with their pain or discomfort. So patience brings a beauty to body and mind. Even though you still have mental defilements, you still have suffering, but it's a quality that will help you to deal and cope with your suffering. So it has a beauty to it. Patience when you're receiving teachings, because sometimes we're taught about things we don't really want to hear about or don't want to do. Sometimes our mind is rebellious. We don't want to meditate, we don't want to be restrained, we don't want to put effort into the practice. But being patient with your own mind, your own state of mind. That will bring a beauty and it will bring you some victories, because you'll see, oh, that state of mind that was coming up, it's just there for a while and then it passes away. If you're patient enough, you can just watch it until it changes, it's gone. When you're very upset, very worried, very afraid, maybe when the wind and the rain comes and the thunder and lightning comes, you have some nervousness. But if you're patient, you'll watch and then that nervousness, that fear disappears. Or maybe you hear a strange animal outside your tent. Last night the deer came down and they encountered all these tents in places where there weren't tents the day before, so they all started barking. Rap. You have to be patient when you encounter animals. And so on. It's a quality that will bring you calm, peace, restraint. And the last factor the Buddha said that will bring you a sense of composure, restraint is virya, effort, energy. We need to put effort in the practice. To not give in to greed when greed arises or greed is tempted by conditions requires effort. When you see the food you like, not to take it all for yourself requires effort. When you're sitting in your meditation, you're bored and you want to start imagining something that's not very skillful, but it gives you some pleasure, you have to put effort into not indulge in that. When you're irritated and you're annoyed and you want to complain or you want to argue, it takes effort to stop that. To get up in the morning, to meditate when you'd rather just lie in bed, takes effort. To keep sitting when you've got some pain or you don't feel so good in your body, takes effort. Every aspect of the practice requires effort or energy, but it makes you more composed. From that effort you get composure, you get a sense of peace. You're putting effort into your practice. Doesn't mean to say you won't have any confused states of mind or difficulties and challenges. They'll still be there, but when you put effort in, it naturally calms the mind, because effort means the effort to abandon unwholesome mental states, the effort to bring up wholesome mental states like mindfulness. If you want a simple instruction, where should I put my effort in the practice? put your effort into bringing up more mindfulness. Everything, all the good that we do requires effort. To offer dana, help somebody, share something with other people requires effort. Keep precepts requires effort, because you have to restrain your habit. If you say the wrong things, do things that hurt others, you have to restrain that. It takes effort. To bring up mindfulness requires effort. When we say, "Oh, I'm not very mindful," what we're really saying is, "I'm not trying very hard." So on a meditation retreat, these are 5 things you're putting a lot of effort into. Keeping precepts, bringing up mindfulness, developing some wisdom and understanding, being patient, and learning how to bring up effort over and over again. If you keep doing that, the Buddha said the result will be composure, peace. The Buddha's word for composure is samvara. That means composure, restraint, peace, calm. And that's not a person in the sense you're a person who practices and you'll experience that, but these are just causes and effects. Suffering has its causes, but the end of suffering, the peace, the calm, that has its causes too. So our aim is to develop the causes for peace and abandon the causes for suffering. This helps you, when you understand this or you reflect on this, it helps you to understand this concept of not self, anatta. When the Buddha said everything is not self, it's anatta. When we're seeing the truth, then we can say suffering is not self, because suffering arises from causes. Even though we feel this suffering is me, my suffering, myself, actually it's something that has risen through various causes. And when suffering disappears, there's causes for that. The Buddha encouraged us to look at our experience in this way, to think about it this way, because it helps to take away some of this attachment to self. We say sakkaya ditthi, self-view, self-belief, personality view. There's different ways it's translated. Taking away this sense of me, you, me, myself, and looking at experience more from a point of view of causes, conditions. Developing the right causes gives rise to peace. Developing the wrong causes gives rise to suffering. So I'll leave you with those reflections this morning, and we can carry on meditating for the rest of the period.